It's Sports Time with Chris. Today I'm giving you a 49ers offseason recap because training camp just started and football is right around the corner. We have, for the first time since, I don't even remember the last time there was a football game, an NFL football game that took place in the month of July. Now I'm sure it has happened before, but I just don't remember that. So that is really cool. I'm pretty sure that's the Hall of Fame game. I don't even know what game it is, but I just know there's a game in July. And the 49ers just started training camp, and there are a lot of fans out there. There are all types of fans when it comes to football. There are those fans who know every single transaction. They know every move that's made as soon as it happens. They have Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport on their Twitter notifications. And then there are some fans who, as soon as the season ends, they kind of just don't pay attention, or maybe they hear things here and there about what's going on with the team, and they show up next season. They're like, oh, who are all these new guys? When did Robert Saleh come back? And there are fans in between. And so I wanted to do this episode where, whether you are a fan who doesn't really keep track of all these things, or whether you do keep track of those things and just want a little recap, then this is the episode for you. And the way I'm breaking this down is sort of chronological. Essentially, I'm starting with, as soon as the season ends, actually, the 49ers season, to be clear, not the NFL season. 49ers season ends up until the draft. That will be the pre-draft headlines. So, of course, free agency, some big coordinator signings that will take place there. And then there's the draft, and then there will be the post-draft, and that will be all the events leading up to training camp, which is what, sorry, cannot speak. I'm recording this episode at really late at night, and I normally never record an episode this late, so please bear with me. I'm also trying a new editing style. We're going to see if this even works out. But yeah, anyway, back to the topics. My goal is to get from pre-draft to draft, post-draft, up until training camp. Some of the headlines going on this week. Kyle Shanahan spoke. There are some other guys scheduled to speak. I'm not sure. I know this episode's being released on Friday, but I'm not sure how much I'm going to be able to record tomorrow. So I'm going to try to do as much as I can tonight and then get to the rest tomorrow. And one thing to keep in mind is I am trying to go in chronological order. It may not be perfectly chronological, and I'm not going to have every single addition and departure. I'm going to go through some of the major ones, at least the ones that I deemed as major. So it's not going to be everything. And the way I'm hoping to sort of counter that, I would love to be able to go through every single player that came up, that joined the roster, every player that left, every player that was traded, all the draft picks. I wish I had the time to go through all of that, but I don't. So this won't be a fully in-depth recap of the offseason. It'll be a pretty basic, simple recap. So if you're looking for a very detailed one, sorry, this is not the podcast for you, but I'm hoping to touch on a lot of these things, and I have not been recording as much as I would like to. This offseason, I started recording an episode when Brock Purdy signed his contract, but I never gave my take on that. So some of those things that I never got to talk about, I'm going to talk about a little bit more here. So bear with me on that. And the ultimate goal is to get to training camp, get to the current roster, and do a brief synopsis of what the roster looks like currently, go through some of the things Kyle Shanahan said, which he said some very interesting things. And, maybe Kyle is growing a little bit. And if you know me, I'm a big time Kyle Shanahan critic. I'll leave it at that. We don't need to talk about Kyle Shanahan yet. So we're going to start by talking about the pre-draft offseason. 3 big coordinator moves by the 49ers. Robert Saleh was brought back as defensive coordinator. Brant Boyer was signed as the special teams coordinator, and Clay Kubiak was promoted to the offensive coordinator. Now, just briefly touching on these coordinators, because I think I've gone through this already a little bit. Robert Saleh, I think that's a really good hire for multiple reasons. He's a proven defensive coordinator in this league. He's done it at multiple stops. He wasn't very successful as a head coach, but he did always have a solid defense with the Jets. So that, I think, is a really good move. And based on what's gone on this offseason, it seems like he's had a lot of say in the personnel being brought to the defense, which is huge. I think that's something that lacked the last couple of seasons with Wilkes and Nick Sorensen. Maybe they didn't have maybe they didn't know exactly what they were looking for or how it fit the scheme. But with Saleh, I feel really confident in his ability to do that. And a lot of the moves that he's made, including the draft, I think he's really retooling this defense for success. And the same thing goes for Brant Boyer, who was the Jets defensive coordinator. They got rid of Tabor Pepper and brought in another long snapper. They brought in another kicker to compete with Jake Moody. And then they let go of Mitch Wisnowski and signed Thomas Morstead. Does that sound right? I don't remember if it was him. I probably should have added him to this list, but I didn't. I didn't think it was that significant, but it kind of is. And then Clay Kubiak, as far as he goes, I don't think he's going to... I think Kyle Shanahan is going to retain his offensive coordinating duties. He's going to be the one calling the shots. He's going to have the ultimate say. And I think this is more of a... Hey, Clay, you've done a lot of good things and we want to keep you around. So here's a promotion, maybe a little bit of a pay bump, but I don't anticipate Clay having that much of an increase in his role. Maybe a little bit. I guess we'll see. Maybe Kyle does want to take a little bit of a step back. Who knows? But from there, we jump into free agency. So the 49ers brought in Mac Jones, which I think boosts the quarterback room. I think he's a better QB2 than any of the options the 49ers have had since the Jimmy G, Trey Lance, Brock Purdy season. So solid move there. Luke Farrell, tight end from the Jaguars. Interesting signing. But that was one of the first big moves that they made. Well, one of the first moves they made that was kind of big. So we'll see what kind of role Farrell has on the offense. Demarcus Robinson was brought in. This one is a little tricky because he could potentially miss the first 6 weeks of the season. So it's kind of like, all right, well, did they know about this when they signed him? What's the thought process there? But I mean, he's a good receiver, so we'll see how that goes. And then Jason Pinnock, safety from the Giants. I think he plays nickel as well. I actually really like this move. I think he could he could do both safety and nickel. And I think that is really important, especially when the 49ers have a little bit of a shakeup in their secondary with Hufanga leaving, with Charvarius Ward leaving, and Lenore is a stud. He's great inside and outside. So being able to have a guy that could potentially play that nickel position helps Lenore focus on being an outside corner, essentially. And then, of course, the 49ers still have that young second-year guy. I'm forgetting his name right now. Anyway, some departures for the 49ers. They traded Debo to Washington. They released Malik Collins and Javon Hargrave. Charvarius Ward, who I just mentioned, signed with Indianapolis. Both Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga signed with Denver. Jordan Mason was traded to Minnesota, which I did not like that move. People will say, Jordan Mason was undrafted and they got, like a 5th round pick or something like that for him. The fact that they even got a draft pick for him is pretty amazing. And for me, I just don't buy into that. For me, it's not about where these guys are drafted or anything like that. It's about what they're actually doing on the field. And I really felt like Jordan Mason was a guy. I mean, he still is a guy. He's going to tear it up with Minnesota. I'd be willing to put some money down on that. I think he's going to do some really good things with Minnesota, especially because they run a similar offense to the 49ers. Of course, a little bit different, but he had success with the 49ers, and I think he's going to have success with Minnesota, and he's going to be potentially one of the top backs in the league. So that is one of my early season predictions. Jordan Mason's going to be one of the top... where should I put him? I don't know if he's going to start right away. I'm going to say top 7 running backs in the league. So there was that move, and then Aaron Banks went to Green Bay. Now, one move that I don't know how I feel about. The 49ers released Kyle Juszczyk. And when that happened, I was like, it's about time. Now, let me just say, I love Kyle Juszczyk. I think he is a true do-it-all player. Absolutely just really, really solid football player. But the problem with what they were doing with him is they were paying him the most money for a fullback in the NFL, and they just weren't utilizing him to his full potential. I mean, he did a really phenomenal job blocking, sure. Occasionally goes out for a pass, but I feel like they could have just utilized him better, and then he could earn that highest paid fullback in the league contract. But I do believe he took a bit of a pay grade because he re-signed with the 49ers. So it's, I don't know. I still have mixed feelings about it. I'm glad he took a little bit less money because I do like him a lot. Now it's just like, okay, one of the issues with the 49ers is they tend to hold on to players a little bit too long, and this might be one of those cases. And a fullback on the roster, could they have used one of those tight ends that they brought in as a fullback, or maybe even sign another running back? I don't know. Just kind of, it's interesting. Maybe Kyle tested out the free agent market and there was just no interest, and that's why he decided to take the pay cut. But I'm still trying to get on board with that one. And so those are kind of the big moves that happened before the draft. Now, the biggest losses for the 49ers, in my opinion, I don't think they're going to miss Malik Collins and Javon Hargrave. I think Greenlaw, they're going to miss. And they're going to miss him for a reason that Kyle Shanahan brought up in an interview this week. And we're going to get to that later. But the things that he said about Greenlaw were very, very interesting. And like I said, Jordan Mason, I think, is going to be a low-key major loss that the Niners may regret down the road. But that's neither here or there. So let's get to the draft recap. So I'm going to start by saying that I have a whole episode. I think this was the last episode I ever recorded for any 49ers related topics, and it was my draft 2025 draft class grades. So I'm not going to go through that. If you are interested in seeing that, go check out that video or that episode of the podcast. Right now I'm just going to go through the picks very quickly, and let's just jump right into it. Round 1, pick 11, Mykel Williams, defensive end, Georgia, which I think is really, really solid pick. Round 2, pick 43, Alfred Collins, defensive tackle, Texas, which, going back to Mykel Williams for a minute, I've heard some really, really good things about Mykel Williams so far into the first, day or two of camp. So yeah, he might be a dude. That's really exciting. Alfred Collins, defensive tackle, Texas, another solid pick, just shoring up that defensive line, making up for the losses of Malik Collins and Hargrave. Round 3, pick 75, Nick Martin, linebacker, Oklahoma State. Just go listen to my draft class recap. I go into a little bit more details there, but this wasn't my favorite pick. Round 3, pick 100, Upton Stout, cornerback, Western Kentucky. Round 4, pick 113, CJ West, defensive tackle, Indiana. Round 4, pick 138, Jordan Watkins, wide receiver, Ole Miss. Round 5, pick 147, Jordan James, running back, Oregon. Round 5, pick 160, Marcus Siegel, safety, Kansas State. Round 7, pick 227, Curtis Rourke, quarterback, Indiana. Round 7, pick 249, Connor Colby, guard, Iowa. And round 7, pick 252, Junior Bergen, wide receiver, Montana. And like I said, I gave this draft class a B-. I think overall they did get some really solid guys who could potentially be starters, and not just starters, but difference makers. And then I also believe they got some good depth pieces as well. So overall, B-. Successful draft. Could it have been a little bit better? Sure. But overall, I was really happy with it. So let's get to the post-draft off-season moves. Okay, so I want to start by saying this. I pulled all of these off of the 49ers website, so I'm hoping they're in chronological order, and there are going to be some moves missing. Like I said, I'm only focusing on kind of the major moves. And the first one that happened was the George Kittle extension. I had to go and get the George Kittle numbers really quick. So George Kittle signed a 4-year, $76.4 million contract, which made him the highest paid tight end in the NFL again. Has $40 million in guaranteed money, and it keeps him with the Niners through the 2029 season. So I didn't mind extending George Kittle. I think he is the lifeblood of this team. He is just one of those faces, one of the faces of the 49ers, of the franchise. So solid move. My only issue with the move was the fact that it came before Brock Purdy's extension. I thought they should have focused a little bit more on the quarterback, because that is the most important position in football. Without him, who's going to get the ball to George Kittle? But overall, I'm happy with that, and I'm glad he's going to be with the team for that much longer. The next move, which I touched on earlier, but Greg Joseph, the kicker, was signed apparently as some competition for Jake Moody. And who knows if this was a move that Brant Boyer requested, but I think it is good for Moody to have some competition. Greg Joseph, solid kicker, proven in the league. He's not, I don't even want to say anymore. Who's the best kicker in the NFL now? Because we're not talking about Justin Tucker anymore. Unfortunately, he went the Deshaun Watson route. So I don't know who's the best kicker then. McPherson? I don't even know. Butker is just a woman hater. So I don't know. Anyway, that's besides the point. After that, the 49ers did sign Brock Purdy to a 5-year, $265 million contract extension. The contract includes $181 million in guaranteed money. So his average annual value is at $53 million, which puts him at the 7th highest in the league. I think that's about what Jared Goff is making. So let's get into Brock's contract. I really, really liked this deal when I heard it. I think it is completely fair, and it was really a win for both sides. 5 years, $265 million. It's really not that crazy. 5 years, so 2030. It's right after when George Kittle's deal ends. By that point, he might be close to the end of the road, but this is committing to a quarterback. Now, the 49ers did do this with Jimmy G. They made him the highest paid quarterback, the highest paid NFL player ever, which didn't last very long. But I think with Brock, the thing is people debate him and they don't want to include him in the top 10 quarterbacks, or in the top echelon of quarterbacks in the league. And I agree. I don't think he's quite at the very top. He's not at the Lamar or Mahomes or Josh Allen level, but I do think he can punch his weight, punch a little bit above his weight. His mindset is constantly to improve. He came back from a major, potentially career-altering elbow injury faster than anyone has ever come back from that. And although he didn't look quite himself that year, ultimately he did eventually start to look a little bit more like that. And what separates Brock from a lot of other guys is the intangibles. It's his leadership, his football IQ. He understands the position, he understands the system, and he's able to run it. And people want to call him a system quarterback. Sure, do whatever you want to do with that. But the fact of the matter is, Brock Purdy, even though last year he wasn't, the team didn't have the success that they're used to. Brock didn't have the success that he wanted, but he was 10th in the league in passing yards, 15th in the league in passing touchdowns, tied for 99th in the league with 12 interceptions. I don't even know what that means. 7th in the league in QBR. So, despite not having the best season or anything like that, I still thought he played pretty well. And that's with Ayuk being gone most of the year, Debo in and out of the lineup. I think George Kittle might have missed some time. And obviously CMC missed pretty much the whole season. So I think Brock this year is going to take a step forward, and people are going to really start to respect him as a quarterback. And I don't think the money's going to change him. I really don't. But he is someone that wants to live up to his contract. He's someone that wants to perform at the highest level and not just say he's the best, but be the best. And he's going to have an opportunity to step up as a leader, maybe be more vocal in the locker room and be more like what a quarterback should be, and I just don't think Jimmy G was ever that kind of guy. But Brock, I think he is. So this signing was big. It wasn't, he didn't go out and break records for the highest quarterback contract ever. I think that was good. It was a win. He's still getting life-changing money. The 49ers are getting a solid investment, and it's a great move. It's a great move. I think Brock really is the guy for this team. And then soon after Brock's extension, the 49ers also extended Fred Warner. They gave him a 3-year, $63 million extension with $56.7 million guaranteed. This also keeps him through the 2029 season, and he's the highest paid off-ball linebacker in the NFL with the average salary of $21 million. So again, Fred Warner, he is, the Brock Purdy of the defense, essentially. And Fred is the guy, when it's all said and done, if this team goes and wins the Super Bowl, these are the guys, those 3 guys, George Kittle, Brock Purdy, and Fred Warner are going to be the 3. If there was a... I don't even know what I'm saying at this point. I should probably end this first part of the recording pretty soon because I'm starting to get pretty tired. But yeah, those are the 3 guys that are going to come to mind if this team goes and wins the Super Bowl in the next few years. So solid move, and I'm glad it came after the Brock Purdy contract. So from there, really the other big move the Niners made was they acquired Bryce Huff from Philadelphia. Just wasn't a good scheme fit over there, and I think this was a solid move for both teams. It was kind of a win-win. Philly got a draft pick. The 49ers got a solid, what is he, a linebacker, defensive end? I don't know exactly what he was playing with Philly, but I think he's going to, find a good... This is more of a fit for him with the 49ers. So I think it's really a win-win, like I said. And he is familiar with Saleh. Saleh knows how to use him. And it's going to be, if he's on the bookend of Nick Bosa or a guy that comes in for Nick Bosa, we'll see. This defensive line is really intriguing this season. And Bryce just adds to that intrigue. And now we're getting to just a few weeks ago. Jauan Jennings requested a new contract or trade. It was rumored that he's looking for a Cooper Kupp type contract, so somewhere in the $15 million range. And what I'm going to say about this is that plane is really loud. I wonder if you can even hear that on the mic. Thing about Jauan Jennings, if the 49ers believe that they have a shot at winning the Super Bowl this year, they will make this contract happen. And the reason I say that is because Ayuk, it's no guarantee when he will come back or if he will be the same player that he was. Demarcus Robinson is going to be suspended. Pearsall, we have learned, has been dealing with a hamstring issue, which he also had last year, by the way. Don't know if it's the same hamstring, but that was something that crept up a little bit. So something to keep an eye on. Besides that, I mean, who do the 49ers really have at receiver? Just no one. They signed how do you pronounce his name? Amon-Ra St. Amon-Ra St. Brown's brother. Equinemius, maybe? I'm butchering that. It's late. Forgive me. But yeah, they just don't have very many options at receiver. I mean, they've got George Kittle. They signed Luke Farrell. The receiver room is just is looking a little thin, a little iffy. Who knows how some of the younger guys are going to look, right? So if the 49ers think this is their year, then I think we're going to see this contract happen. Now, I personally don't love the idea of paying Jauan Jennings at this point, but the Niners may not have a choice. And don't get me wrong, Jauan Jennings does deserve to be paid some more money. There was one thing I was looking at where he had very similar statistics to DK Metcalf, like pretty dang close to DK Metcalf, and yet DK Metcalf is making like $30 million a season, $33 million a season. But, I think that was just a bad move by Pittsburgh. Similar stats to DK Metcalf. So, yeah, I think he does deserve some more money. I don't necessarily think the Niners should be the team to pay him that money because they just gave Brock a big contract. And at this point, a problem that we obviously saw them run into was they had Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk on the books. I thought it was a mistake. I didn't think it was a mistake paying Ayuk. I think it was a mistake paying both him and Deebo. Like, they should have chosen one over the other, in my opinion. And now they're kind of running into that with Juwan Jennings. Sorry, got a phone call. Got a little distracted there. But yeah, with Juwan, well, it's mostly to dealing with Brock. This is where I struggled with them giving CMC that extension last year. That wasn't the only issue with that. I mean, he didn't play at all last year. They're very fortunate he did not tear one or both of his Achilles, to be frank. I think he had a similar issue to Tyrese Halliburton, who, of course, with Tyrese, it's a little bit different because it was the NBA Finals, and he was playing through that Achilles heel issue that he was dealing with, and I don't blame him, When you're in the NBA Finals, I don't think he would have been able to live it down if the team lost and he sat out and he was like, man, what if I played? What if I played and I was healthy and we ended up winning? So I think he did the right thing. That's so tough, such a tough position, because now he's going to miss an extended period of time and it's going to hurt the team during the regular season. Anyway, that's nothing to do with CMC. If they knew they were going to pay Brock, which who knows when they made that decision. From what I heard, I believe Jed York or John Lynch or somebody last season, maybe before the season even started, or some point during the season, said they had already made that decision. So who knows when exactly they decided to pay Brock or what that amount would be. But when you have a guy with that much money on the books, the money's going to get smaller everywhere else. And that includes a receiver room, a running back room, which is why I thought they shouldn't have gone. They should have never paid CMC that money. Just a lot for a running back, especially an injury-prone running back like him, who's getting a little bit older, and gone with a guy like Jordan Mason. But that's besides the point. Juwan, phenomenal third down receiver. I think he could have asked for a little bit more money. Man, I swear that was last season. Was that not last season he got an extension? Or did he only get a 1-year deal? I don't remember. So maybe he already used the, hey, I was almost Super Bowl MVP argument. Who knows? But one thing I will say about Juwan Jennings, in the 49ers' first Super Bowl, Deebo Samuel was on his way to be Super Bowl MVP. And then the 49ers stopped giving him the ball. In this last Super Bowl, they decided to try and force feed Deebo. That didn't work. Ayuk didn't really do anything. George Kittle had 2 catches for 4 yards or something like that. Now, I think that's more of a game planning issue. I think they could have tweaked the game plan a little bit more for George to do something. But these guys, the guys that got paid, Deebo, Ayuk, Kittle, CMC fumbled on the first drive. These guys, when you think of NFL Super Bowl winning teams, someone usually elevates themselves, right? I mean, Tom Brady always did it. Eli Manning did it. Patrick Mahomes has done it. Someone always elevates themselves. I cannot speak right now. I apologize. All those guys that the Niners paid, none of those guys did it. They did not elevate themselves. You know who did elevate themselves? Juwan Jennings, when the lights were the brightest, when it mattered the most, Juwan Jennings was the guy that showed up. They asked him to throw a pass in the Super Bowl on a trick play, and he ended up, he didn't throw the ball 50 yards downfield, but he threw a pass exactly where CMC needed it to score a touchdown. He made some big plays. He's made big plays. He's known as, third and Juwan. And he had some really, really big games last season when Ayuk was out. So that's why I think he does deserve that much money. I just don't think the 49ers can afford to pay him. And maybe that was something they could have factored in before they paid Ayuk as well. Maybe they paid Deebo and Juwan. Maybe that would have been the better duo, before Purdy got his contract. I know. Anyway, there was a report today that Juwan Jennings did not actually hold out or hold in. He participated in drills, so maybe they are going to give him a little bit of an increase. That's the thing, is I don't think they can give him $15 million a year, but I think they can say, hey, Juwan, look, we would love to be able to pay you that money, but we just can't. So this is our offer, 10 to 12 million. And, we understand that might be less than what you're looking for. So if you really do want to explore trade, then we can move forward from there. But I don't mind giving Juwan a little bit of an increase, but the $15 million a year just seems a little bit steep to me. 10 to 12 seems a little bit more appropriate, although he was really the only guy on that offense that elevated himself in the Super Bowl. So, take that as you will. That's just a little interesting wrinkle to throw into this whole Juwan Jennings ordeal. I do love Juwan Jennings. He is also an excellent blocker. Physical, he gets in people's faces and tends to piss people off and get them kicked out of games. I mean, he got himself kicked out of a game before he reached, what was it? He needed 60-something yards to accomplish, was it a 1,000-yard season? I gotta look this up real quick. 975 yards. Yeah, he needed 25 more yards in that last game to go over 1,000, and he did not. He got himself kicked out. That was pretty entertaining. I remember that. That was good. So anyway, that's enough about that. Okay, so it is getting pretty late. I'm sure you can tell I'm getting a little tired. Some of the words I'm saying are not making sense anymore. So I'm going to finish off today's part of the recording by talking about the players that were added to injury reports right before training camp started. So some of these are not surprises. However, there is one surprise on this list. The players added to the active/physically unable to perform list: Brandon Ayuk, Andre Dillard, Yetur Gross-Matos, Malik Mustafa, Ricky Pearsall, and Curtis Robinson. Now, Pearsall was an interesting addition to this list. Shanahan said he's been dealing with a hamstring issue for a while, and they think he'll be back soon. But it's, I don't know. We'll see. Pearsall, I was going to do a whole other episode on this, and I still probably will. Pearsall is one guy that I am really excited to see this season, because last year was just weird. I mean, he got shot, and he looked good when he played, but man, it was just a weird offseason. It's not every day you get shot, so he was dealing with that. But even before that, he was dealing with some, I believe, hamstring issues. So I'm interested to see if this is the same hamstring. I have to go through Shanahan's presser because there was no audio on it, so I need to find it and see if he was asked about Pearsall. Is this the same hamstring as last year, or is it different? I just hope Pearsall isn't injury prone. That would not be fun. So hopefully he's back soon. And then there were two players who were added to the active/non-football injury list: Ben Barch and George Odom, who was just released. So interesting. Again, another one of those guys that was brought in for the special teams. And that's it. Training camp began this week. So when I'm back recording tomorrow, which hopefully will be a seamless transition for you listening, besides me talking about it, we're going to dive a little bit into training camp and into some of the press conference and interviews done by Kyle Shanahan. So again, I anticipated this episode would be quite a bit longer than my usual episode. So here we go, talking about training camp. And before we get into training camp too much, I want to talk about this quote that Kyle Shanahan on the TK show earlier this week. And essentially what Kyle said, he had a group of defensive players at his house. I think a lot of the kind of defensive leaders were there. I'm not sure if the whole defense or just those top guys, but he essentially asked them what game they thought was the best defensive performance of the year. And he had his own answer. And unanimously, they came up with the Rams game when Dre Greenlaw returned. And what Kyle said next, I think, was really key. It was a sign of growth from Kyle. But he essentially said how the defense, and the whole team, including himself, seemed to be extra motivated once Dre Greenlaw went out there. And simply having his presence elevated everyone else around him. And Kyle said, while that was awesome, and Dre Greenlaw is an awesome football player, and it is really cool how impactful his presence alone can be on the team, that is not the 49ers' MO. They should go out there. It shouldn't matter who's on the field. It shouldn't matter if it's Drake Greenlaw or D. Winters or some other guy. Okay, maybe not Devondre Campbell. Okay, he's an exception. Devondre Campbell he brings down the team a little bit, I think. So That situation still cracks me up. But anyway, back to the topic. He's essentially saying that it shouldn't matter if Drake Greenlaw's out there or not. They need to go out there and, not care about anything else besides them playing their brand of football. And he said that he needs to work on that, and the defense needs to work on that going forward. And I completely agree with that. Losing Dre Greenlaw in the Super Bowl was huge, and maybe it felt like I think the Niners definitely still had a chance when Dre Greenlaw went down. That definitely impacts your psyche a little bit. I'm not going to pretend that was the main reason why they lost, but they still had a chance, up until the end of that game. But yeah, very, very interesting from Kyle. And I think it was cool to see him kind of make that change, and maybe he's going to start treating the players a little bit different and not necessarily, if he sees them not being as motivated, which you can't teach motivation. It's very interesting. Motivation is intrinsic. And so guys finding motivation through someone else is a little bit interesting. So I think Kyle is going to kind of rework how he approaches that and try to get guys going, even though he's not that kind of emotional leader, I guess. So yeah, just an interesting little tidbit on Dre Greenlaw. So let's get into his first training camp update. So I'm just going down the transcript of it. I didn't get a chance to listen to it. I think the audio was messed up or something the first time I tried listening to it. So let's see, where can we go? Demarcus Robinson, he was asked about what did he think of Robinson and what can he contribute. He did a good job, had a decent job today, and we'll see what happens with the possible suspension. So of course that's something that they're keeping an eye on. So yeah, I'm not going through the whole transcript today. I'm just going through some of the areas of interest because Kyle is not the most interesting to listen to during for these press conferences. I know he doesn't love doing them either. But one thing that was pretty interesting was he was asked, will Nick, Trent Williams, and Christian McCaffrey be on a schedule throughout training camp? And he said, yeah, there are a number of guys, like guys with injury past, guys with age, guys who are going through stuff now, guys who aren't totally hurt. There are certain things with their history or what their ages are that we have plans with. So they're all different, but a lot of those guys are coming off an off day. They just do individual. Sometimes we'll stagger them, but we've got a whole mapped out thing that they update me on each day. So it's very interesting that he mentioned injury pass here because Christian McCaffrey is not necessarily old. He's a little bit old for a running back, but not crazy old. But the injury past thing, that to me just screams Christian McCaffrey, unfortunately. And I've said this time and time again. I said this earlier. I thought it was a mistake to let Jordan Mason go and to pay to extend McCaffrey whenever they did. Was that last year or 2 years ago? Because of his injury past. You just don't pay running backs that much money, especially when they have that past. And even Saquon. We'll see what Saquon does this year. He was unbelievable last year for the Eagles, and obviously we saw where that led, but he's had some injuries in the past before as well. We'll see how he holds up this year. Running back is just a tough position physically, and for Christian, it's not even these physical injuries that hurt him last year. It was the Achilles tendonitis that he was dealing with. That's probably due to overuse, honestly. I mean, he had an unbelievable year the year before, but even then I was thinking, man, he just is not coming out of the game. They have capable running backs behind him who can step in and go in and play at a high level. Well, high enough level. And I thought Jordan Mason could even play at a higher level. So another guy that I'm intrigued by this season is Jacob Cowing. We didn't see him too much last year, but this year with the injuries to the injury to Ayuk, possible Demarcus Robinson suspension, Pearsall being down, we could see some more of Cowing to start the year. And someone asked Kyle what they need to see from Cowing, and he said Jake had one of the best OTAs out of anybody in terms of most improved and most prepared for it. Unfortunately, I think he pulled his hamstring on routes on air today before we started. So I'd say to just keep on his trajectory. Hopefully he can stay healthy and keep going where he did in OTAs, but probably had a little setback today. So hopefully that's better news than what we're guessing out there, and he can get back to what he's doing in OTAs. These It's funny, I've never actually read the transcripts for these press conferences, and you can tell there are some where the words are slightly off, or maybe Kyle has an interesting cadence when he talks. So sometimes reading it back, it takes a minute, so I apologize for that. But it was cool to hear that before this injury, Jacob Cowing was one of the most improved players and most prepared. So hopefully he can get back healthy, because I really am excited to see him. I think he's potentially a weapon for this 49ers team, potentially a punt or kick returner, I believe, and someone who, who knows, he might be the new Debo role. And I just want the Niners to get back to doing some of those things that they did in the past. They don't do as much anymore, which is like the jet sweeps, the screen passes. Those are things that are high percentage plays that typically get you at least a few yards. It's what the Chiefs like to do. The Eagles as well. It works, and there's a reason why it's so successful in the NFL. I'd like to see them get back to that, and I think Jacob Cowing is a guy to target for those types of plays. Another question that Kyle was asked was, what is day one like for you? And I did not love his answer. First of all, he starts in the negative when it comes to day one. It's a little frustrating. I hate practicing without pads. It just worries me. So I just want to follow these rules, get to the pad so it's a little safer with protection and stuff. You have a chance to block people. You can start just getting more ready for football. It's hard day one. Everyone's ready to go, but still got to be patient. So I just try to stay as relaxed as possible to get in this groove, and usually we are by next week. I can see where Kyle's coming from and wanting to be in full pads and being able to actually hit and not just do things against air, because, I don't know. When I played football back in the day, the non-padded stuff was fine. I don't love coming out with this sort of negative approach to day one. I think day one, you have an opportunity to really set the tone for the rest of the season. Now, you're not going to set it completely, but I think you should at least try your best to come in and be like, hey, we're going to kick ass today. We're going to go out and do this stuff on air or, not entirely hitting, and we're going to have a great day of practice. And for Kyle to just have this kind of negative attitude again on it is just... it's just not my favorite, and it's just kind of how Kyle is. This is where I'd be interested to see what other coaches in the league are. You know what? We're going to do this real quick. So, to compare with someone who has been very successful the last few seasons, Andy Reid talked about the expectations for the Chiefs at the start of training camp. Now, this isn't specifically about day one of training camp, but just listen to the difference in what Andy Reid says. Yeah, main thing is urgency. The urgency, just keep that up. Everyone's expectations are high amongst the team, amongst everyone around. But it comes down to the work that you take care of here and the foundation that you build here. This article I'm reading on Chiefs Wire states that since becoming the Chiefs head coach, Reid's training camps have earned a reputation for being tough. He pushes players to become stronger and play with speed while focusing on overall fitness. He says, so it's a ramp up. There are ramp up days, which I think are good, for probably everybody, coaches and players. And so it's a gradual ramp up, not only length of practice, but then also starting with our shells on and then working from there. So that's what we're going through right now. So that's just a major difference to me. And I'm very curious to see what Kyle says to the team before going out to camp. Like, does he go up there and say, hey, I know everyone wants to be in pads. Like, what does Kyle actually tell his team? That's what I'm really curious about, because I know he doesn't love doing press conferences. So maybe players seem to love him, and they do seem to buy in to what Kyle says. So who knows if he's a little bit different behind closed doors when he's talking directly to the team, but just listening to this answer he gives during this press conference, it's hard to imagine the team fully buying in if he's also that negative with them. But again, he could be completely different when he's talking to them. I don't know, if I were a head coach day one of training camp or some sort of camp like this, for me, I'm telling these guys that this is where they set the tone. It's not about what the coaches do. This is their opportunity. If they go hard day one, then they're going to go hard the rest of the season. And they're going to, you've got to set the bar high, especially for a team like this, where I'm not going to get into the details too much of what my predictions for the season are, but I do think this is a team that has some surprisingly high capabilities. And I'm only saying surprising because of what we saw last season, which was a huge disappointment for everybody. But yeah, that's enough about that. From there, I don't think he said anything oh, yes, again, going back to positivity, which I agree in a sense that being positive all the time isn't great, but Kyle was asked about Kittle's leadership style and what he appreciates the most about it. Kyle's answer was that he is there always. Kittle is probably one of the most positive people I've ever been around, which I think can be really good. Sometimes I don't want him to be so positive when we're struggling, but I think it's a good balance with everything. That's who he is, and he's consistent with that. So I think guys look to him for that. Sorry. Sometimes these answers, man. But when it comes to leadership, the best thing is showing up and doing your job and doing it as good as you can every day in terms of playing when you don't feel right, preparing, knowing your assignments, getting your body right in every situation. And I think everyone on our team knows Kittle's going to do all those things. To me, that's the best type of leadership you can show. So he's saying that, through whether he's not fully healthy or the team is struggling, Kittle is the same guy all the time. And I think that is really important. Not necessarily about the whole positive thing. I think it's interesting that Kyle says he doesn't want him to be so positive all the time, which, again, Kyle on the surface seems to be a little bit more on the negative side when it comes to in general. I mean, hopefully Kyle's not depressed or anything. Hopefully that's just his work self. It would be very interesting to see. They should do Severance for NFL players. My wife and I just finished that series, which was amazing, by the way. One of the best shows I've seen in a while. So I'd be interested to see what Kyle's work self versus personal self looks like. Anyway, that's besides the point. And I think that's a big part of the reason why they re-signed Kittle. He is just a leader. He's the same person through and through. And those are the kinds of guys. And he's a top level player as well. It's not like he's just some tight end. He's the tight end in the NFL. Him, Kelsey. I mean, there's some other guys that are coming up, but ultimately I think Kittle is number one. And yes, I'm a 49ers fan. I might sound biased, but when you're talking overall tight end, both running, receiving, blocking, and being a leader, I think Kittle checks all those boxes, and that's why he's number one, and he continues to show that. And one thing that I've said the last few years is that this offense should be run through George Kittle, and for the most part, I still agree with that. I think Kittle's definitely getting a little bit older to play that kind of role, but in the games that really matter the most, I think that's what the 49ers should go to, is running the offense through George Kittle, not through McCaffrey, not through one of the receivers, whether it's Ayuk or Jawan Jennings. I think you got to run it through George Kittle in those big time games. We saw what happened in that Dallas game a few years ago, and quite frankly, I think this is what their plan should have been in the Super Bowl. I didn't think the Chiefs really had a good defender to guard George Kittle one-on-one. He only had, 2 catches for 4 yards? I don't think that's on George, but, he's a little bit older now, so you've got to be strategic. And when you do these kind of these heavy game plans centered around him. But yeah, love George Kittle. I'm glad I have a George Kittle jersey. It's one of my favorites. unfortunately, I think that's the only up-to-date jersey I have at the moment. I had a Debo shirt jersey and a Debo regular jersey, both with number 19, by the way, so, prime Debo. But yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna miss Debo. I just saw a clip from him at Commanders training camp, and he looked pretty good. Kyle was asked on if he gave Christian McCaffrey any fatherly advice, and Kyle said, "I just messed with him, asked him if he was going to change now that he's a dad, and he made it adamant that he wouldn't. So we'll see. I'm sure he won't. He's a psycho." Speaking from my own experience, I have to say, having your first kid, I probably should know this. I don't remember if CMC had a boy or a girl. So it doesn't really matter, I guess, but I think having a kid can really motivate guys. And knowing the type of person that Christian McCaffrey is, and I know I hate to rag on McCaffrey for his injury history and stuff like that. I do think it's not his fault, but he has had a history also of being overused, both in Carolina and by the 49ers. So I think that definitely plays a part in why he has been injured so often. But he also is just a maniac when it comes to training and improving. I mean, he went all the way out to Germany last year to have purportedly some stem cell treatments for his Achilles. And I think he's the type of guy that having a kid isn't going to be and I definitely understand where that can come from. Having a kid, it can, especially when you haven't had it before, haven't had a kid, can make you more tired. You're going to lose a little bit of sleep. Although the McCaffreys are pretty well off. They might have a night nurse who comes in and takes care of the baby. Who knows? Maybe Olivia will want to take care of the baby on her own, or have Christian help out. Anyway, that's besides the point. That's getting into Christian's personal life. We don't need to do that. But yeah, I think McCaffrey is definitely the type of person who will find motivation by being a dad. It's crazy how, at least personally, I've seen this complete shift in myself since becoming a dad. Yeah, it seems like I wouldn't say I'm on a Christian McCaffrey level, but I'm doing a lot more now to improve myself than ever. And a lot of that has been just simply wanting to be the best dad for my daughter. And so, not to compare myself to CMC at all, but I can definitely see him not changing. So, day one of training camp. Some things of note. The practice field was changed a little bit. Kyle Shanahan joked that the field left him dizzy and nauseous. Again, Kyle being Kyle. Injuries. Jacob Cowing left practice early, which we just talked about. He's expected to miss some time, so hopefully not too much time. I love to see a little Cowing action in the preseason before the regular season. Ricky Pearsall did some rehab work on the side. So CMC, Trent Williams, and Nick Bosa are three guys who are having managed workloads, as LeBron James likes to say. I don't actually know if that was LeBron, but I know that's an NBA thing, is their managed workload days, and that's now a thing in the NFL as well. Let's see. I think one thing that I've heard, that I've seen from multiple people on Twitter, is that Michael Williams really seems to be a guy. He just seems to be an absolute menace, and I'm so excited to see Michael in action. I guess he's been playing with the first teamers, which is cool, but man, Michael could be the Niners don't always hit on their draft picks, but sometimes they do. And when they do, those guys tend to be top of the league guys. They're either nobodies or they're Hall of Famers. Okay, maybe not Hall of Famers, but you know what I mean. Pro Bowlers, all pros. And if Michael can be anywhere near that, I think that's a home run pick. Okay, so we're going to get right into day 2 of training camp. This episode's going a bit long, and so I know there were some other press conferences that took place with Robert Saleh. I think George Kittle and Nick Bosa talked as well, but I'm not going to get to those today. Just a little bit too busy, and I need to get this episode out because I wasn't able to record yesterday like I wanted to. But some of what happened in day 2 of training camp. One move that I forgot the Niners made last year was they signed Israel Abanikanda. There was a lot of hype around him that he could potentially be actually a pretty legit running back, but he was waived because the Niners signed a guy named Quintez Cephas, which sounds really familiar. I wonder, Quintez Cephas, has he been with the Niners before? He's been in the league for 4 years. He was with the Lions, and then he went to the Bills, Texans, Rams. Oh, he's had 4 touchdowns in his career. Okay, so not too shabby. A nice little depth piece there. Probably because of the Cowing injury. Trey Brown, Trey Brown was a pretty good offseason move. I liked that move when they made it. Not a huge... I don't know if Trey Brown will be a starting cornerback, but he's a solid guy to have behind Renardo Green and Lenore. Him and Upton Stout rotated in the first team defensive backfield. That was weirdly worded. So it'll be interesting to see which of those two guys ends up playing. I heard Brock Purdy had a pretty good day in camp. The first day he had a little bit of a struggle. But it seemed like he was really sharp and on point in the second day. And then there was a big play. I don't remember if it happened yesterday or the day before, but Mac Jones hit, what's his name? Mac Jones hit Isaiah Nair, I believe, down the field for a really big completion. So that guy is really making a name for himself. Seems like he was a huge steal, huge get. He could potentially be an impact player for this 49ers team, which is exciting. The Niners, I've said for years, the Niners could use a good downfield, deep threat receiver, and maybe this guy can be that. Guess we'll see. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to get to was going through the 49ers roster so far at the start of training camp. Now, there have been some moves made. I don't know how up-to-date this roster is. I'm just going off what ESPN has. And it's also not in depth chart order, so keep that in mind. But like I said at the beginning of this episode, I wasn't going to be able to go through every single transaction that the 49ers have made. I was only going to hit kind of the highlights that I wanted to, or the ones that I felt like were substantial. And so now I'm going through the depth chart, and I'm going to, no promises, but I'm going to try to put up a graphic with all these guys on there so that you can visually see it. So if you're watching the YouTube version of this or the video version, you can see the depth, the roster a little bit more clearly. This is also just, if you haven't, this is just to give you the most up-to-date roster for the 49ers if you also haven't been able to keep up with all the transactions that have gone on. And I'll give my brief thoughts on each of these players as we go, anyone that stands out. So yeah, let's go. Quarterbacks on the roster. Mac Jones. Like I said before, I think he might be one of the best backup quarterbacks in the league now. Major upgrade from last year with Brandon Allen and Josh Dobbs. So yeah, great move by the Niners getting him. I think that's just a solid get for a backup quarterback, which, knowing this offensive line, the 49ers may unfortunately need. Tanner Mordecai, again, he is a guy who I think could be a solid third string guy. I mean, if it comes down to him, we haven't seen too much from him besides the preseason last year, and he seemed pretty solid. So, third string guy. Brock, I already gave all my thoughts on Brock. I think one of the best quarterbacks you can have on your team. And then Curtis Rourke, I didn't think the Niners should draft him. So, yeah. Running backs, Isaac Guerendo. I think he has a real opportunity to make an impact this season. He looked good at times last year, and man, he could potentially be a weapon with his speed. That is something that stood out last year. Jordan James, again, man, I thought he was a solid draft pick. I'm an Oregon guy. I think Jordan James could potentially be between Guerendo and James. There's no reason McCaffrey should be on the field 100% of the time. Those two guys can easily come in, step up and play running back effectively, I believe. Corey Kiner, I honestly don't know much about. And then Patrick Taylor Jr., he's been on the team before. Solid fourth option. I don't know much about Kiner. So between those two guys, I guess one of them will be a solid, will be a fourth string running back. I mean, Patrick Taylor, for a fourth string guy, somewhat good. So can't be horrible. That's what one thing I'll give the Niners credit for is they usually don't have bad running backs. And we're going to lump Kyle Juszczyk into this fold. Holy cow, he's 34 years old. I did not realize he was 34. Yeah, he's on the team again. Hopefully they actually use him. That's what I'm hoping for before he gets too old. They actually use him as a weapon instead of just a blocker. But, receivers. Brandon Ayuk, hopefully he can come back this season and be somewhat himself. I think if he's I thought before his injury he had the potential to be one of the top 5 receivers in the NFL. Now with his injury, I think he can still be a really effective number 1 guy. But, just hopefully he comes back healthy. That's all I can ask for from Brandon Ayuk. Even if he's not entirely himself, I think he still can be really solid. Junior Bergen, I didn't think he should, not my favorite pick. Quintez Cephas, potentially a solid depth piece. Jacob Cowing, I'm really excited for. I think he has a chance, if he can stay healthy, to be a role player on this team. Russell Gage, a little bit older guy. I know, I think he might have been with Shanahan in Atlanta. I don't know for sure. Isaiah Hodgins, a lot of these guys are potentially, pretty mid receivers, but solid depth pieces, if that makes sense. So I don't know if Brock can, I think Brock has the potential to be able to elevate the guys around him. And if, these are the receivers that he has, if he truly is one of the top quarterbacks in the league, then I think he's going to be able to elevate these guys and help them win games until they can get, someone like Brandon Ayuk back. Juwan Jennings, solid guy, solid receiver. He could potentially be receiver 1 going into week 1. So that would be really interesting. I love Juwan. Hopefully they can find a little bit of a pay raise for him, because I do think he brings value to this team. I just don't think he's a $15 million a year receiver. Malik Knowles, Isaiah Nair, he's a guy who's starting to stand out a little bit in training camp. Potentially a really, really solid get for the 49ers and a, dare I say, a starting receiver. That would be pretty cool. Tariq Owens, son of Terrell. I don't know. Hasn't stood out so far. We'll see if he can step up. Ricky Pearsall, he's the guy that, again, if he can stay healthy, he's maybe my number 1. Well, number one's got to be Mykal Williams for me, for guys I'm really excited to see this season, to see what they can do. But Pearsall's right up there, because last year he didn't have a full season. He got shot. I think we'll get into those guys later. Demarcus Robinson, solid receiver, a little bit older, might not even play the first 6 weeks, so interesting decision to sign him, but I guess we'll see. Equanimous St. Brown, brother of Amon-Ra. I'm sure my brother, who is a big Amon-Ra St. Brown fan, would have preferred Amon-Ra, but Equanimous he hasn't done too much. He hasn't been on the same level as his brother. It was really interesting to see him a little bit on some of the podcasts he's done with Amon-Ra. They're cut from the same cloth, so maybe he can come in and be a role player. And then Jordan Watkins, of course, was the 49ers Ole Miss draft pick. Yeah, we'll see what he looks like. Tight ends, Ross Dwelley is back for some reason. Luke Farrell, of course, was their offseason signing. Trent Williams had an interesting thing to say about him yesterday. He was asked, what does Luke Farrell bring to the tight end room? And Trent Williams was just like, he's the same as all our other tight ends. That was interesting. Maybe he just doesn't know Luke Farrell that well, or maybe Luke Farrell sucks. I guess we'll see. George Kittle, best tight end in the league. Mason Pline, a guy came in last year, I think potentially he's a massive dude, 6'7", 260, potentially a weapon. I guess we'll see. Jake Tonjes and Braden Willis, who of course the Niners drafted a few years ago, but he hasn't really done much. So yeah. All right. Offensive line. We're going to start with centers. Jake Brendel, Matt Hennessy, Drake Nugent. Hennessy is a guy who I think potentially could come in and take Jake Brendel's spot. the Niners have apparently no intention to improve at offensive line. So if Hennessy can be better than Brendel, then hopefully they make that move. Guards, Ben Barch, Connor Colby, their draft pick, Zach Johnson, Drew Moss, Dominic Pooney. Dominic Pooney has a chance to even elevate from last year, and he was a top guard in the league. So solid draft pick there. That is one spot where the Niners improved last season. Tackles, Isaac Alacorn, Spencer Burford, Andre Dillard, Sebastian Gutierrez, Colton McKivitz, Austin Pleasance, Trent Williams, Nick Zakelj. So yeah, just no, I mean, who knows? Andre Dillard maybe is an improvement there. Who knows? just not seeing a lot of improvements for the offensive line, which is great. It's one area that the Niners just don't like working on for whatever reason, or they believe that they're going to just keep building the guys that they currently have, which, you know, makes sense. Like, you do want to develop the guys that you have, but if they're not developing significantly, then you would think you want to try to jumpstart that process, which the Niners haven't really done. So defensive line, starting with defensive ends. Robert Beal Jr., a guy who hasn't had too much of an impact, but I thought he would be more of an impact player. Maybe we'll see him grow this season. The Niners really do have some solid defensive ends that can rotate in and out. Nick Bosa is one of those guys. I think you've heard of him before. Good rotational piece. Occasionally makes a sack or two. No, wow. Yeah, Nick Bosa. Love to see him have a little bit of a better year this year. But yeah, Jonathan Garvin, Yetur Gross Matos, which I think he's on I said he was on the injury report. Bryce Huff, I talked about a little bit before. Again, he is a guy that could potentially come in and be a nice rotational piece. I think that is so key for a defensive end, specifically because you can come in and the Niners also have their NASCAR package where they have mostly they have speed guys come out and an attempt to rush quarterbacks. So, man, this defensive line could potentially be the strong point for the 49ers this season. Teron Jackson, Mykel Williams. I mean, maybe I'm hyping him up too much, but man, I think he has a real shot at being a defensive rookie of the year, high impact player for the 49ers. So super excited for him. Evan Anderson, he's a guy that was talked about quite a bit coming out of training camp last season. He played a few games, I believe, and I think he's a solid defensive tackle. I hope he makes this team. Alfred Collins, huge human being, 6'5", 332. Excited to see him. Kalia Davis and Kevin Givens are two guys that I think are such underrated players for the 49ers. They're not huge, but they come in and they usually make big impacts whenever they do. At least Kevin Givens does. I think Kevin Givens is like one of the low-key jewels of this 49ers defense. Jordan Elliott is another guy. And Sam Okwanunu. I can't say his last name. Sam Okwanunu. Sorry. I'm probably butchering that. Yeah, not a huge guy, man. It's very interesting to see these guys listed at defensive tackle. And Kevin Givens is 6'1", 285. And then there's Alfred Collins, who's 6'5", 332. So obviously they play different roles, but I think having these bigger bodied guys definitely helps with the running defense. And a guy like Alfred Collins could potentially be one of those guys that plays both run and pass downs. So really excited there. Sebastian Valdez and is another rookie. I don't know. I think he was maybe an undrafted rookie. I haven't heard of him. And CJ West was another guy that the 49ers drafted. Again, a little bit of not a huge defensive tackle, but maybe more of a pass rush type of guy. Linebackers. Tatum Bethune, Stone Blanton, Luke Gifford, Jalen Graham, Nick Martin, who I talked about. He has potentially high upside, but he has had a little bit of an injury history. So if he can stay healthy, he could potentially be a pretty solid draft pick for the 49ers, but we'll see. We'll see if there's anyone that can get the most out of him. I do believe Robert Saleh is that guy. He has a way of elevating linebackers, and you know, it seemed like he really had his hand in picking the defensive players during the draft. So if Robert Saleh likes him, then hey, maybe the injuries are something they could look past and aren't too worried about. Then this could be a good get for the Niners. Curtis Robinson, Chaz Surratt, Fred Warner, decent guy, decent linebacker, and D. Winters. Of course, potentially the guy to play the Dre Greenlaw role. Big shoes to fill, but people, I mean, I really liked so far what I've seen from D. Winters, and again, bringing in a guy like Saleh, I think can only elevate someone like him, where maybe he hasn't played to his full potential, but he's, with Saleh, he can elevate himself. Cornerbacks, Derek Canteen, Dallas Flowers, Renardo Green, Diamador Lenore. Those two guys could potentially be the two starters on the outside. DMO, I think, has a chance to be he really got robbed. I felt like, I don't think he made a Pro Bowl. I really think he can be a top cornerback in this league. And Renardo Green, we're going to see what he does. Chase Lucas, Darrell Luter, Saron Neal, Jacob Robinson, Upton Stout. Where's Trey Brown? Did I already say Trey Brown? Okay, I don't know if I said his name. Maybe I skipped him. Trey Brown, Trey Avery. So Trey Brown and Upton Stout apparently are the two guys kind of fighting for that third cornerback position. They haven't come out and said who's going to be their slot guy, although Kyle Shanahan did talk about Lenore potentially being the nickel when they come out in nickel, and then moving to the outside whenever they're in their base defense. So I guess we'll see there. And then safeties, we're just doing the whole defensive backs here. Jair Brown. People were disappointed in Brown last year, and yeah, I think he didn't have his best year, but man, I think Jair Brown can also be a guy that takes a step up. Took a little bit of a step down last year, sure, but that doesn't mean he's going to keep taking steps down. Bringing in Saleh, having more solid defensive scheme in general. I mean, Nick Sorensen just wasn't it, man. Nick Sorensen was not it. So potentially having just a better defensive staff in general will help Jair Brown. People forget he had that pick in the Super Bowl, man. I think he can be pretty solid. He's still really young. I think the Niners need to give him a chance. Richie Grant, Jalen Mahoney, Malik Mustafa, hopefully he can come back healthy sooner rather than later. Jason Pinnock, I think, is a really intriguing pickup by the 49ers. He's done some pretty good things with the Giants, and he said, I believe he said he believes he can be a Pro Bowler or All-Pro, and I really like hearing that from a guy. It means he just wants to keep improving and elevating himself. So yeah, hopefully he can be a guy. I also believe he can rotate to nickelback as well. So just love having those types of guys in the defensive backfield who are kind of a utility knife. You can pretty much place them anywhere. So yeah, that would be cool. And then of course the Niners draft pick from Kansas State, Marquise Siegel. See how he does. And to round out the roster, the special teams, Greg Joseph and Jake Moody are apparently competing for the kicker spot. This is a tough one. This is tough because when it comes down to playoffs, I think you really want a guy with experience like Greg Joseph, but Jake Moody has a higher upside, I think, at this point in his career. He's just got to get his confidence down a little bit. I've said this before. Jake Moody should not have been a third-round pick. That doesn't mean that he can't be a solid kicker. Just the Niners, I think, put way too much pressure on him by drafting him in the third round. It's just insane to me. But, and the new punter, Thomas Morstead, and long snapper, John Weeks. Interesting moving on from Mitch Wishnowsky. Thomas Morstead is 39, so is John Weeks. So, hey, a little bit more experienced. We'll see how much that helps. But punting hasn't been a huge issue, I don't think. Although I believe I heard that Brant Boyer said something about the long snapper being a major part of the reason for why he believes Jake Moody has struggled over the last few years. And Brant Boyer, really solid special teams coach. I'll take his word for that. And then the injured reserve or out, Trent Taylor. I still don't understand why he's on the team. And Trey Tomlinson. So there we go. That rounds out the roster for now. Obviously, we know that is going to be cut down over time. And this is going to wrap up this episode. This is a very long episode. So thanks for tuning in. I'm hoping to get this going, now that we're going to get into preseason and we're just going to get right back into football. So my goal is to have weekly episodes on Fridays, talking 49ers. Oh, one more thing. The 49ers announced today, along with, I think, eight other teams, that their rivalry, I cannot talk right now, their rivalry week uniforms will be unveiled on August 28th. So I'm very interested to see what the Niners do. Seems like there seems to be a theme with some of these teams going to a black uniform, which I don't know, man. Like the whole going to blackout or whiteout uniforms just seems so overdone now. I hope the Niners find a way to do something different. Like, I don't know. Some people, for example, the Green Bay Packers unveiled their new throwbacks. They've got like the blue uniforms with the yellow circle in the front, and then they're doing the painted on leather helmets on their helmets. Some people hate it. I think it's really cool. I think it's a lot better than what they did before with those ugly brown helmets, which Cleveland brown is awful helmet color, by the way. Anyway, that's besides the point. I just hope the Niners do something different than a blackout or whiteout uniform. I thought the Saints had a decent idea going with the gold uniforms. They just missed the mark with the shade of gold that they went with. But I just really want to see the Niners do something a little bit different than white or black, because the Niners whiteout uniform, their white 94 throwbacks are some of the best in the league. Keep those are awesome, but I just want to see something a little different. Maybe not too over the top, but just different than a standard blackout or whiteout uniform, because those are so overdone now. And I don't know, maybe gold is in the mix if they can execute a little bit better than the Saints. That'd be pretty cool. Anyway, like I was saying before, my goal is to release my sports podcast on Fridays going forward. Today's episode is being recorded. At least the last part of the episode is being recorded on Friday, so it's going out a little bit later than I would like. But I'm aiming for an early Mountain Time release on Friday mornings. So stay tuned for that. Thank you for listening, and let me know what you think about the 49ers roster, about what this offseason has looked like. For me, I think it has been a decent retooling offseason, and as we get into the preseason a little bit more, we're going to get to see some of these young guys, some of the depth pieces, and really know what we can expect from the Niners this upcoming season. The additions of Robert Saleh and Brant Boyer, I think, are awesome. They're going to make major improvements in their respective areas. Robert Saleh seems to have a big hand in what the defense has done in the offseason and the draft, and I think that's good. So once again, thank you for tuning in. This has been Sports Time with Chris.